first year that we've come round to doing bird cereals. I must admit I was quite sceptical because this field last year was used for the mechanical weeding trial that we did with innovative farmers, and it was a very, very weeds challenged winter wheat crop. So it had gone from pigs into spring wheat to winter wheat and now to the rye, and I'm surprised because there's obviously weeds in the canopy, but there is a very much viable crop. You can see where the trackways, and perhaps the points being made earlier, they're obviously a challenge to us through the rotation, and yeah, perhaps we should be leaving them as grass trackways the whole way through. So just to run over a bit what happened with the mechanical weeding, because quite a few of you came to the event. If you remember last year we had our dry weather at a completely different time to when we've had it this year. So basically we had dry from the middle of March, well, it was about the 20th of March actually, through to the 10th of May last year. And we had our mechanical weeding day on the 9th of May. And so it was exceptionally dry, nearly as dry as it is now. And that was a challenge to us because trying to mechanically weed crops that are stressed already means that you're going to have a lesser response from the weeding than you would have if the crop wasn't in such physiological stress. So we had 4 different weeding types. We had the haricone weeder, the Oppico haricone weeder, the Garford robo crop, and the rotor net, the comb cut, which went over the top and kind of cut over the top of it, which was used in conjunction with the Oppico, and then a control where there was no weeding. Now we took it right through to harvest and got it harvested by a plot combine, and we also had whether it was weeded once or twice within the rotation. And at harvest, statistically there were no differences in yield between any of the treatments. When you look at the graph,
was that including the control?
Including the control. So weeding did not improve yield. In fact, I had a dissertation student take that on and look at protein and Hagberg and things like that, because there was a lot of weed in that crop, and I thought it might have affected, especially as we had an exceptionally wet August here. I mean, we didn't harvest this field until the 1st of September, and there was no treatment effect on any of that. Now, that said, this year we've had a completely different set of circumstances. We were wet, wet, wet up until about the 25th of April, really, and couldn't touch field operations up until that time for spring drilling, or as it would have been for mechanical weeding, really. And we know we had an exceptionally late spring, so it's been a very short growing season here altogether. But I just thought it was a useful opportunity to relate some of those weeding techniques. So I'll just hand back to Tony if you want to say some more.
Okay, yeah, just briefly on the weeding day we had last year, for any of you that were here. The area of spring wheat that I weeded with the Oppico tined harrow, I managed to kill virtually all the spring wheat within the plot. I had a lovely square patch of south thistle and came up with a good rain.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite exceptional. So I was talking about the winter wheat trials when I said there was no response. The spring we didn't take on through to yield out of any of that, so they were demonstration plots rather than replicated plots. And I mean, the poor old spring wheat, it wasn't a year for spring wheat on this farm at all.
No. Again, I mean, this year we've had sort of the same sort of weather patterns, but slightly different timings. So my spring crops look less than pretty. This field we winter ploughed, or we ploughed it in March. We had a lambing weekend middle of March, which was the weekend when we had all the snow and
the beast from the east day,
the beast from the east.
Yeah.
So trying to get people on an open tractor trailer rides was a bit of a challenge, and it obviously affected attendance. But we ploughed the field that weekend as part of that weekend's activities. Headland was too wet to plough, so we left the headland alone at this end, just at this end of the field. It had got traffic when we were putting the muck on just prior to the ploughing event, and we planted the the bulk of the rye got planted about the 29th of April, and then we turned around, ploughed the headland, and I put a very robust seed rate of rye on it, on the assumption that I wasn't going to get a very good crop, but at least I'd be able to smell the weeds a little bit. And you can see the effect is probably worse than I probably imagined. Rye itself looked very well right the way through until early June. Started to slow down a bit then. If you look into the crop, you'll see there's some fairly unhappy looking charlotte plants down in the canopy. So it's done a job on those. It's succumbed to brown rust as well with the high temperatures, and obviously yield potential has dropped away fairly significantly.
Still podded though.
It's still podded,
but
yes.
This is on the more open bit anyway. Yeah.
So I mean, the rye is definitely giving us that third cereal option with a bit of reliability. Let's say this year I might just try switching to winter rye, I think, just to give me a bit more assurance of establishment. We seem to be getting the last 3 or 4 springs now. We've had, sort of 6 weeks of one sort of weather, and then we get 6 weeks of another sort of weather. So if we can sort of mitigate against that a little bit, and just go back to increasing our winter cropping and shade, that might be useful.
Thank you. Just talking about some other crops we're working with. So I've always had a few students working on different things. We had a very successful wheat bean intercropping project based on some land nearer the university. And this year I've had a student start looking at soya. And I must admit it's an absolute nightmare of a journey. So obviously we weren't really able to drill the crop until May because of getting the site preparations ready. We had to get the site ploughed to have the plot drill go through it. And the seed went into a very dry seed bed, and then when I investigated why it wasn't emerging as quickly, or when I thought I knew there was going to be delay because of the moisture, discovered that we had devastating bean seed fly infestation. And I mean, that land there isn't actually certified organic, but we wouldn't have any choice of a seed dressing on that anyway with the near nick ban as it stands. There are some plants there, some varieties have definitely gone better, so we're scoring that element of it as well. He actually went on and did a second sowing because we ended up with some Russian varieties that we wanted to try. Because most of the soya grown in the UK at the moment is Ukrainian varieties, and if you think that's very much main continental European varieties, and by looking at some Russian varieties and Canadian varieties and things like that, although they're also big continent varieties, we're looking for some shorter growing length, days of growth for the soya, and I'd say it is a challenging crop to grow. I would rather grow beans and wheat together and have the nightmares of drilling that, which is, well, it's not a nightmare, but it's a head scratcher, isn't it? He'd say it's a nightmare. Yeah, another work we've done, which has been very successful, and we just had a paper out this week on red clover, building soil fertility through red clover, and using different ploides, so tetraploids and haploids, and different maturity and flowering times of red clover, and had some really successful crops grown after incorporating the red clover in, and good yields of wheat after that situation. So there are the things that work and things that are still quite challenging. Any questions on that?
Nicola, in terms of your weed seed bird, over the back you've got a fantastic crop of dogs.
Yes.
Have you thought about running through with like a double drop forager, putting it into a trailer, composting it or burning it, just to try and reduce the seed burden of weeds?
The pigs normally dig the docks.
Yeah, I appreciate that in a normal year. It's not normal.
Year. The problem with triangular paddocks, trying to do any mechanical works out there doesn't tend to be very easy. So I've sort of lived with it this year really. And obviously we're going to sort of carry a weed seed burden forwards. pigs normally do a brilliant job on dogs. And when we came to this farm in '88, the organic area had been in place for 4 or 5 years prior to that. And our biggest headache was cooch. And until the pigs came, we used to spend quite a lot of time with a triple K pulling cooch rhizomes up into heaps, collecting them up and then burning them in a corner. You've got a job to find any cooch anywhere on the organic section now. And docks, but they do tend to do a reasonably good job on docks, obviously, a year like this. And again, probably going back to a fattening unit rather than a farrowing unit, we're not probably going to get the same level of excavation that's decided. So we need to try and get more handle on going forward.
So after nearly 30 years of organic management here, in 88,
Yeah.
you're running other land similar to this elsewhere in the college, sorry, university, which is conventional. Down at gross margins year in year out, accepting exceptional years like this. How do they compare?
Gross margins on organic cereal crops will be better than conventional. Our margins on the land when we consider building.
So 5 year, on your whole farm,
On our whole farm margin, we are probably, it's unfair to say,
Yeah, no, it comes out very even. It comes out very even.
pretty even. I think if you've got a good robust farming system, be it organic or conventional, then you're doing the best, making the best of your resources. Like I say, they should be
have you got any data on that?
We've got loads of data, and yeah, because we keep it. I mean, there's masses of it on the website, and every now and again a student does a project analysing that, and obviously you get a few blips in the system. When we did have the whole farm organic for 5 years, and that was when grain prices went from £60 a tonne to near enough £200 conventional grain prices, and then everyone was kind of going, why have we got the whole farm organic in a way? And that caused a few blips over that end. But then you take, where grain prices have been very recently, and it evens out. If there was a huge difference between them, our governing body would be trying to sway us to be rid of either the organic land or the conventional land. We obviously have a very important educational value by having both, and we're allowed to keep both.
I mean, I suppose as a farm manager, I can sort of semi-hide behind the educational aspect, and we do quite a lot of things that are maybe not strictly commercially sensible to do, but we do it from the educational value. And I strongly feel if university farms aren't doing this sort of thing and exposing our students to the benefits and the pitfalls of various things, then it's a poor job. And I've been here nearly 40 years. I can remember Nikki when she was a PhD student. And it's always been the drive to actually teach students that keeps the job interesting to me. And seeing students come in as first years and go away as third years with more knowledge, that if you've helped them a bit along the way, that's what it's all about. So some of the things that we do, maybe, why on earth are they doing that? And even my HLS, that little strip over there, there's 2 different varieties, 2 different types of seed. When our contractors come to drill here, they know that if they're drilling a field from me, there's probably at least 2 different varieties in the same field.
At least.
Yes.
And we try things. We've worked with